The million-dollar question. What will happen to the Metroid series? Or better yet, what are the possibilities of Metroid on the NX? To answer these set of questions, it's best that we analyze the future of the franchise methodically. In other words, to take a step back to discuss what is possibly Nintendo's best kept secret.
What in the world is that guy rambling on about?
Yeah, it's just some yahoo talking about Metroid on YouTube.
Metroid? What happened to that series?
Well, this happened. The game doesn't look all bad though, it just wasn't what most people expected.
I really didn't expect that either. Sorry, I couldn't help myself from overhearing you guys talking about Metroid.
Wait, how'd you get in here? There's a dress code
Before we discuss the possibility of Metroid NX, let's first discuss the non-linear direction the franchise is heading towards. To accomplish this task, let's take a look at the Metroid series with an objective view. Performing this will lead to a startling revelation. Despite what many would believe, the Metroid series hasn't sold considerably well. To bring things into perspective, Metroid 2 on the Game Boy actually sold better than most other titles in the series. If we look at the Metroid franchise chronologically, we can see that the series is in decline as far as sales numbers is concerned. So obviously the powers that be over at Nintendo would naturally attempt to break series conventions to bring Metroid to a broader audience. This is nothing new. The series has actually experienced a similar event in its own history. For example, during the inception of the franchise, the series was in a similar decline. Super Metroid, for instance, is considered by many to be a stellar title. However, it was released at the end of the Super Nintendo's lifetime in 1994. To reinvigorate the series, Nintendo wanted to approach another developer to create a Metroid title on the Nintendo 64. However, this never came to fruition. Then in 1998, Retro Studios was born. In the subsequent years, Retro would develop titles for Nintendo's new GameCube. Initially, they would work on 4 games at the same time. However, all of these projects would be scrapped by a disapproving Shigeru Miyamoto. What occurred afterwards is controversial. Under the initiative of Miyamoto, Retro Studios would develop a new Metroid title.
What is going on over here?
Sorry ma'am, this guy just barged in here and kept talking about Metroid.
This is the last time you messed up here, Pete. You're fired.
Now this reminds me about Metroid Prime's development cycle. Miyamoto desired this new Metroid project to be in first person. Despite the many objections of Retro, the development of this new Metroid title was absolutely horrendous, with much of Retro staff being laid off beforehand and 2 Retro presidents being shown the door. Through it all, however, Metroid Prime was finally released in 2002. Quite the paradox, really. A chaotic development cycle produced one of the highest rated games in history. To this day, it is the best-selling Metroid game in the series.
I take it back. Pete, you can have your job back if you kick this guy.
Unfortunately, the franchise is under a curse. 1 year before Metroid Prime was released, Halo Combat Evolved launched on Microsoft's Xbox. Ironically enough, Metroid Prime 2 and Halo 2 actually released on the same month. To capitalize on the first-person frenzy, Prime 2 introduced multiplayer. However, Prime 2's multiplayer was rather two-dimensional compared to others at the time. Ultimately, Metroid Prime 2 sales pales in comparison to its predecessor. Then in 2006, Metroid Prime Hunters for the DS was released. This title expanded on the possibilities of multiplayer in Metroid, and it is a bit of a pioneer in its own regard. However, it did not sell well either. Later in the same year, the Wii was released, which harkened the development of a new Metroid title. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption is the result. But again, it was released around the same time of Bungie's Halo 3. And once again, consumers compared both first-person titles with others around the market. Prime 3 did sell better than Prime 2, but it still did not reclaim the prestige of the very first Prime game. Metroid Prime 3 is the last Metroid game that Retro worked on. Reasons for this lay in the project's aftermath. In April 2007, key developers left Retro Studios. One of these developers is the individual that directed the entire Prime trilogy, Mark Bassini. In addition, lead level designer Jason Baer also left the company and ended up working with 343 Industries on Halo 4. Notice a pattern here? Ultimately, I can only speculate, but perhaps one reason explaining why these individuals left Retro Studios is because how Nintendo treated them in the past. With constant layoffs and 2 presidents being let go, it must have been unstable to work at Retro during the developments of the Prime trilogy. In fact, Metroid director Mark Bassini went out to say, "I never played any of the Metroid games after they were done, just because I was just so sick of them."
Is this the guy, ma'am?
Yep. Please take him away.
Wait, before you do that, I do have some valuable information concerning Metroid NX.
Wait, what did you just say?
Perhaps we can talk this over a drink? With many key developers leaving Retro Studios, Nintendo then sought to develop their own Metroid iteration, with one of the founders of the franchise, Yoshio Sakamoto, directing the game. This became known as Metroid Other M. The title attempted to bring the Metroid series to be more of a narrative-driven franchise, but it did this at the expense of exploration and isolation, the very foundations of a Metroid title. As a result, the title did not fare all that well, to say the least. For better or worse, the Retro Studios we know now is not the same one that developed the Prime trilogy. The Retro of today recently developed titles for the Donkey Kong franchise. So in other words, Nintendo is in a bit of a conundrum. Many key developers that worked on the Prime trilogy have left Retro. Nintendo tried to make a Metroid title themselves, but the after effects of Other M still linger in recent memory, so the only other option would be to let another developer work on the franchise. This is when the developers over at Next Level Games comes into play. Prior to the release of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon back in 2013, a Metroid game was in development. However, this project was scrapped, which leads us to E3 2014, when Shigeru Miyamoto and Shinya Takahashi alluded to the creation of brand new Metroid titles. Then in E3 2015, Metroid Prime Federation Force was revealed to the public, which has garnered much criticism. Nintendo wanted another developer to claim the mantle of Metroid developer. Additionally, they would want the game to accommodate a much broader and casual audience. Federation Force is the result of this. What prompted the game's creation is the work of Metroid Prime producer Kensuke Tanabe. He wanted to expand the Metroid universe. Originally, the game would have been released on the Wii U. However, it was developed for the 3DS due to Next Level's familiarity with the 3DS hardware.
So, what does this have to do with Metroid NX?
Well, it means that either Nintendo will be developing the project in-house, or to give it to a second-party developer. My theory is that they will do the latter. However, some friends of mine might have some more knowledge on the subject, if you would allow them to enter this fine establishment, of course.
Fine. Let his friends in.
So, this is Maka from Nintendo Box, and this is Joey from Ferris Wheel Productions. Now, quick question. What would you guys like to see in Metroid NX?
I would kind of like them to, really go full force with this game. Because Metroid has historically not sold well, but I think it is one of those games that does grab people. It's a game which isn't Nintendo's usual style of, family-friendly gaming. It's a bit more mature, and I'd love to see them go the kind of No Man's Sky route, but ground it in the world of Metroid. That would make sense to me, and it just seems like a perfect fit. You'd be able to, explore the universe. It would be really cool, and I'd like to see what they could do with it. Of course, not sticking straight to the formula of No Man's Sky, but kind of taking on that and expanding it even more.
Alright, so my dream right now is the reason why Retro Studios hasn't announced anything so far is because their development for the new Metroid game jumped ship to NX. And I'd also like to think that about Animal Crossing and Pikmin 4, that kind of thing. Because if Metroid as an NX launch title, that'd be amazing. And more people would play it because it's a launch title, you know what I'm saying? And more I would like to see the series go from here on out is, I want them to go back to first person and do some more, like, I don't want to say open world, but kind of what Maka was saying with the whole No Man's Sky thing. Not necessarily extremely open world, 500 billion hours of content, that kind of thing, but like what Metroid Prime 3 did, where you could explore different planets and stuff, and yeah, that's my spiel with it. I just want Metroid back, guys, so badly.
So what comes next? Who should develop the next console Metroid game? Retro Studios? Keep in mind that they are not exactly the same studio that developed the Prime trilogy, but despite this, they just might be the ideal choice. So what can we expect from Metroid NX, or what about its direction? Well, that is up in the air for now, in my opinion at least. Hello Games' No Man's Sky is the closest thing we have to a new Metroid experience. To explore the vast universe, observe mysterious alien life, and have that sense of isolation just looming over the player. Speaking of which, looking at the Metroid franchise is analogous to looking at a tragedy. When Metroid Prime was released, the series seemed to have been saved. But then key developers from Retro left in 2007, which prompted the Metroid series to be in a state of flux. Who knows what Nintendo is doing to our favorite bounty hunter behind closed doors?
Yes, my body was ready.
Moreover, the history of the Metroid franchise is not a linear expression bound to only one developer, but rather an interconnected idea that finds itself to new developers ambitious enough to accept its mantle. Thanks again for allowing my friends and I to enjoy ourselves in your establishment.
Well, looks like you aren't just a monotone scrap of metal after all. Take care.
Wow, I can't believe that actually worked.
Seriously, I got a bunch of free stuff and all you had to do was blabber on about Metroid.
So, where are we heading next? The Tops Casino? Maybe Gamora?
Not now. I heard some interesting things about a certain Hellion though. But that will have to wait until next time.